Today's discussion will be presented in three sections since we are recording this session for a radio broadcast on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Feel free to post questions and comments during the session and we'll try to get them answered online. We are particularly pleased to welcome our moderator, Jason Miller, Executive Editor of Federal News Radio 1500 AM. Let me turn over the reins to Jason to begin today's discussion.
Welcome to the panel discussion today. This should be a great conversation about cloud computing and how agencies are delivering on their mission while saving costs. My guests today are Adrian Gardner, the Chief Information Officer for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Harry Lee, a Senior Computer Scientist for Infrastructure at the Census Bureau, Greg Pelton, the Chief Technology Officer for Avaya Government Solutions, and Chuck Riddle, the CIO for the Government Printing Office. Welcome, gentlemen, to the program. Well, before we get started, let me set some context for our discussion. We've talked a lot about cloud over the years. Agencies are finally entering that stage where there's a lot of talk and a lot of pilots are over, and they're actually using the technology. Chuck, you're the first one here to tell us that you moved out of the pilot stage and you're jumped right into the bandwagon. But remember, that was only 2009, 2010 when OMB first released its cloud-first strategy, the 25-point IT reform plan, and to talk about the potential of cloud computing. Now, as of 2014, the growth of cloud computing is huge. Deltek, a market research firm, estimated the cloud-related expenditures by federal agencies will grow from $440 million in 2010 to $1.4 billion in 2015. Another market research firm, Market Research Media, their estimation around cloud is even larger, to grow by $7 billion to 2015. So no matter how you slice or dice those numbers, agencies are more comfortable in moving to the cloud. And in fact, Federal News Radio just completed a survey with federal CIOs and deputy CIOs, and we found that 60% of those respondents say they've already moved email and collaboration to the cloud, and 48% said they've moved public websites to the cloud. And up next are human resources, acquisition, and agency-specific apps are on their way to the cloud. So what kind of cloud are these apps in? Well, again, according to our survey, they're split evenly among government-only commercial cloud, 44%, a commercial cloud, 36%, and a government-run cloud at 20%. And then finally, we asked what kind of apps are they planning to move into the cloud in the coming months or years, and customer service and agency-specific apps were among the most popular. Now, I think our survey definitely shows agencies have moved past that initial toe-dipping stage, email, public websites, and are ready really to push mission-critical apps into the cloud. But there's always a but. Even with the growing trust in the cloud, there's still plenty of challenges and concerns. Security, without a doubt, is the top one. A Congressional Research Service report found in February that the State Department, for example, they say cloud providers aren't able to match their ability to monitor their systems in real time. CRS also found Treasury Department officials say the Federal Information Security Management Act's requirements of maintaining a physical inventory is challenging in a cloud environment. So there's cloud. There's also challenges around interoperability, portability, project management. So the things don't necessarily change because they're in the cloud. They're still the same challenges. So with all that being said, let's turn to our panelists to get some of these questions answered. Again, my guest today, Adrian Gardner, the Chief Information Officer at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Harry Lee, a Senior Computer Scientist for Infrastructure at the Census Bureau, Greg Pelton, the Chief Technology Officer for Avaya Government Solutions, and Chuck Riddle, the CIO for the Government Printing Office. I'm going to turn to Chuck first, since you're immediately to my left here. Cloud, what are you doing today? You guys made some big news earlier in the month. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that news, about cloud, and then where you're at with it.
Sure. Well, we're in the process of moving to the cloud for our email system, and we're excited about it because we get to be the first federal agency in the legislative branch to do that. I view this move to the cloud for email as sort of a gateway to the cloud for GPO. It's going to let us do things that we've been doing for years, but I think it's going to help us do it a lot better and help us focus the resources that used to go into supporting those things on mission-critical applications instead, and also help us set a foundation for the things that we want to do next in the cloud, depending on what makes sense. I mean, cloud is just another tool in the toolbox, and it's one that we're trying to figure out exactly where to fit. Email was a good first step for us.
So let me turn to Greg from Avaya. Gateway, as you heard Chuck mentioned, email is that first step. I hear that a lot from agencies. From your government customers, are they viewing email as that gateway, or is there a different type of gateway that they're walking through?
I think there's a couple. So email is definitely one. Because it's low-hanging fruit for most enterprises. We specialize in communication and collaboration technologies, and I think what we've seen is a number of customers are trying to move those capabilities to the cloud, and there's different ways to do that. The first step doesn't necessarily mean you have to take all of your infrastructure and put it off somewhere where you can't touch it anymore. You can start today with a cloud business model and then move to a cloud deployment as a second step. So it really looks like an evolution from managed services through to a full private cloud, because primarily our customers are interested in private cloud. But there's an intermediate point where you can start to offload the management of the infrastructure and start the transition and have someone else take care of that for you, so you don't have to deal with all the operating expense and complexity.
And when you talk about the different business model, that's the managed service, because we've talked about managed service a lot over the years.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it ends up being financially, you can buy by the drink, and you can have that kind of flexibility within your environment and within your budget. You don't have to have a big lump sum dedicated up front.
Let me turn to Harry Lee from the Census Department, Census Bureau. Talk a little bit about what Commerce is doing and what Census is doing specifically around cloud.
Thanks, Jason. Right now, we have kind of a hybrid approach to the cloud. Our initial efforts were really trying to get it right internally from a private cloud offering, consolidating, standardizing, virtualizing our environment, providing a transparent way for users to request services. We also have some experience with public cloud. We do some website content delivery cloud services. We do customer experience management services. From a government community cloud, like Chuck, we're moving our email to the cloud. Matter of fact, we hope to have it done by the end of this calendar year. And we're looking again at a combination of hybrid and public. We are looking at how we deliver our mission critical systems as well, and I can talk more about that later.
So one thing that you brought up is that you guys at the Census Bureau have put a lot of public-facing websites in the cloud. That was almost because of the data, so much data you have, and so much demand that Census gets for your data. Is that part of the reason? Yeah,
we are in the data business, and we not only want to provide fixed data sets, we want to provide auto-discovery and dissemination capabilities for those who want to get access to the data itself via public API. So yeah, dissemination of our data is one of the key values that we look for the cloud in the future.
In many ways, that was the reason why you guys went in that direction first, maybe versus an email like we've seen maybe with some other agencies, or did that just work out that email was just a secondary need based on many factors?
Again, looking at how we deliver best services to our customers, which is not just the public but other government agencies. So dissemination of our data was key. We have more work to do in that area. It's the way we present our data. But the use of email, again, we also have a virtual desktop infrastructure which hits almost all the employees. So those high-impact applications, one from supporting the citizens, from web content delivery, and one supporting the employees from communication and collaboration.
All right, let's turn to Adrian Gardner from FEMA. You guys are in an interesting position because your parent, if you will, of agency, DHS, has been putting together a cloud infrastructure, the one DHS concept, the DHS data centers. Where does FEMA fit in? What kind of services are you guys using?
So I mean, remember our role as far as FEMA and the continuity role that we have. So we have been playing heavily with the department's strategy as far as cloud first and an overall sort of enterprise approach towards cloud. But saying that, we are also making a foray into actually looking at our mission applications and putting those in the cloud. So I think the twist on it now, although we're looking at hybrid cloud, is that the public-facing service, actually the cloud service providers, would be the primary, and we'd be thinking about then the on-premises being being sort of the backup. So a little bit of twist in the strategy. When I think we first thought about cloud, we were thinking about cloud as a backup for a lot of our disaster recovery and COOP capabilities. Now we're saying that maybe we should flip the model and actually that the service providers the cloud service providers that are actually certified through FedRAMP should be the primary way in which we deliver, and then we think about a backup as far as on-premise. So we've really been thinking about this whole notion of availability, and that's so I like a lot of times what I say with FEMA is that when customers and service providers come to us, we think about it from a standpoint of they build towards the 80% solution. from FEMA's context, we actually look at the 20%. So we do need that additional robustness from the standpoint of the capability, because most of the time we operate in very austere environments. So the whole notion of how do we leverage cloud and its distributed sort of infrastructure really allows us to then improve the continuity and availability of our services and capabilities.
And I think the key word there is the austere infrastructure sometimes FEMA operates in. Is that part of the reason why you've kind of taken this twist on maybe your approach to cloud? It's saying, well, if we need to be in a rural part of America to help after a tornado, the DHS data center, may or may not be easily accessible, while a network, whether it's Avayas or whoever, maybe that's more accessible, more easily, more quickly. Is that part of the thought?
Yeah, that's part of the thought. And again, remember, we bring in a lot of that connectivity to that location. So, but again, it's with limited bandwidth. So the ability to get out to the internet and then share capabilities is extremely important. The other piece is moving towards web services in the cloud, right? So that it's really the interface, the access is much simpler, much easier for our customer base.
Now, Greg, you were shaking your head a little bit. You must have heard something that not only you like, but you seem to, maybe you're hearing from your other customers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the government business that is not predictable, where demand changes over time. And we've seen a number of customers, and FEMA be a good example of that kind of customer, where if you have sudden spikes in demand and your infrastructure can't support that, the cloud allows you to have that burst capability. And so it means you don't have to pay for infrastructure all the time, because you need it like once a year or once every 3 years. And if you think about the IRS or Social Security or the post office, there's lots of agencies that have that kind of flexible demand.
You hurt Harry's feeling because you didn't say census every 10 years. Yeah. The demand that they get, and your demand's more than every 10 years. We know that your demand's probably every 6 months when you put out those American community surveys, right?
Actually, we are as you said, in the data business, and we do surveys and censuses, and a lot of people know of the Census Bureau for the decennial 2020, but we do the economic census every 5 years, the Census of Governments, American Community Survey, Current Population Survey, and a lot of other surveys. So, we again are looking for those opportunity to use the cloud for peak demand and performance requirements around those major data collection and dissemination opportunities.
When you guys get a peak demand, and if you can give me a sense, do you see a spike of 20%, of 50%? And I know each one's a little different, but how do you plan for that?
Historically, we've used paper a lot for delivering of our censuses and surveys. We're moving more and more to electronic and getting away from paper. So our demand model is different. So we really don't have a baseline that we're working from. So we have to do a lot of testing and do some projections, which is what we're doing now, so we can identify what are those performance requirements, what's demand, what's the peak, and what are the options for delivering that. And cloud is a great opportunity for that.
There is no formula for one piece of paper equals X amount of bytes on your computer hard drive, is there? Maybe I should come up with that formula and I could make some money. Let me turn to Chuck real quick. You guys have a different type of demand because when Congress is in session, it's very, very busy. I get to see that from a reporter's perspective. But when Congress is not in session, you probably have less demand, or it doesn't necessarily even work that way.
Well, to a certain extent. I mean, with GPO, even when Congress is not working, we're still cranking out a lot of other products that people probably don't even know about. We produce the passport for the State Department and a lot of other things. So in addition to that, we also have a website called FDSys, which is essentially the government search engine to be able to search for government documents. So that's an area where we're looking at cloud to help complement how we deliver services with that to handle the variability of demand. Because we might post something on there. We recently posted the Warren Commission report, an authenticated copy of that citizens can go download, and we have to make sure we've got resources in place to handle the spikes of demand that we deal with. So it really depends on the things that we post out there for the public.
Now, with FDSys, you guys had moved that to the cloud early on. And what you're looking at now, to make the changes, how to continue the improvement about it?
Well, we haven't moved it to the cloud yet. Oh. We're in the process of delivering the next gen FDSys, which will incorporate aspects of the cloud to it, both on the storage side as well as on the delivery side of it. So it's in the works. And it's something that, from the CIO's perspective, it gives me some comfort to know that if we can incorporate cloud, it helps us to make sure we can deliver. Whereas if we were hosting it internally all the time, it's a lot harder to guarantee you can deliver for those spikes in demand.
Adrian, let me go down to your side of the table for a second, talk a little bit about that delivery of value, the delivery of services. Mm-hmm. Again, when you talked about FEMA and FEMA's role of supporting the nation in time of disaster, in time of need, your spikes are different because your spikes are unpredictable. So you may have to tell your provider, we're going to that area of America that's been ravaged by this flood, by this tornado. We're going to turn you up now. Is that the way it kind of works, or is that? I know I simplify it.
It's very simplified, but that's,
of course,
so some of it is really, and one of the challenges I think in general with cloud is the terms and conditions of the service, right? How do we have those correctly sort of positioned and struck when we actually sign on the dotted line? So this whole notion of surge and the way that, and the amount of surge, especially from a standpoint of it being a national event, it's something that we have to continually sort of work with our partners. I mean, FEMA is more of plays a large coordination role, and so we coordinate with our partners as we respond, and it's everything from state, local, and tribal to the federal entities that are actually working in concert to address and respond to the event. But we're also looking at our private sector partners and all of that. So I think when that kind of event occurs, it's sort of an all hands on deck, not only just from a standpoint of the federal, state, and local, but also our private sector partners, even academic partners, and even the nonprofits. So all working together. So what you really see is sort of a turn where folks will just actually turn and do the right thing. But we also need to be able to really look at the terms and conditions where those things there's a wedge put in for that kind of sort of ability to surge in capability, capacity, and service.
Adrian, you mentioned something, terms and conditions of contracting. I think we should go down that path, but first we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the panel discussion, Delivering the Digital Government Mission, sponsored by Avaya Government Solutions on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.